Hey, what's up, YouTube channel? Stars down again. Y'all go hard or go home. All right, today I'm gonna be watching some Dr. Todd Grande. All right, so this dude gonna be talking about sugar dating today. Okay, I'm against the sugar dating thing. It seems that it's become real popular in the manosphere, but it's not something that I'm particularly going towards myself or that I advise people to do or say that they should do. All right, we're going to get a little advice from this guy today. Before we get into that, if y'all like the info, y'all hit subscribe, hit like. I don't do the cash apps, all the doggone money and junk like that. I'm not asking for nobody's money or begging for nobody's money. I want to get a subscriber that's going to keep me interested, and then I keep going from there. So without further ado, we're going to get in here and we're going to see what Dr. Grande had to say about sugar dating, and we're going to talk about it a little bit at the end.
If you find this video to be interesting or helpful, please like it and subscribe to my channel. Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today's question asks if I can take a look at the mental health and personality characteristics around this concept of sugar dating. This is an arrangement typically between an older man, referred to as a sugar daddy, and a younger woman, referred to as a sugar baby. We see this kind of highlighted in the recent case of Mackenzie Lewick, a 23-year-old college student in Utah, murdered by someone posing as a sugar daddy. Mackenzie met the 31-year-old alleged killer in a Utah park at 3 a.m. in the morning and was later murdered. We see the alleged murderer had written a book about this type of murder, and he asked a contractor to build a soundproof room in his basement and put a secret door on it and put hooks on the walls. Now, it's a little bit of a mystery as to why the contractor didn't report this. Of course, it's reported now after all this has happened, but I don't see evidence that it was reported before. He said he was weirded out and he just told the guy he was busy, but it's really clear to someone who works in mental health that this man's request, again, the alleged killer's requests, were going to lead somewhere bad. So really not clear what happened there, but I think just kind of an important concept here that when disturbing ideas are put forth, even to people who aren't involved in mental health or criminality or anything like that, they should report those types of things to the police. At least give the police an opportunity to investigate. It might result in the person who is going to commit the crime just being scared. They realize somebody's watching them, so they might not do it. Or they could catch them trying to do something. But either way, that was a little odd that that wasn't reported. Now, allegedly, Mackenzie had this sugar dating relationship with two other men. We see these social media posts that point to this, but it's really too early to draw conclusions. There will certainly be more details about this case in the future. Why did the killing take place? What exactly happened in terms of the timeline? But for now, this case really highlights the risks of this type of arrangement. So when we talk about this arrangement, sugar dating, how does this work? Well, as I mentioned, typically this involves an older man and a younger woman. And the older man provides money, gifts, access to a house, an automobile, takes the woman out to dinners, the theater, and all this is exchanged for companionship, affection, and sex, but that part's not explicitly stated. And this becomes important later on when I talk about some of the potential criminal aspects of this behavior.
Now, one thing I want to say about that is because with this sugar shit, it seems to me like that they can't say out loud they want sex. But one thing I've noticed, that I've always known about it, is that when women went into the sugar daddy thing, they didn't want sex. They want the money and the gifts or whatever, but they didn't. This is why I won't go anywhere near sugar daddy shit. But we're gonna see what he's gonna say about the rest of it, because yeah, I totally agree. In most cases, I've seen it. The woman doesn't want she doesn't want that relationship for real anyway. She just wants the money.
So we see websites that facilitate these types of arrangements being formed. They advertise that this is a mutually beneficial arrangement that involves honesty, and they advertise that it's safe, secure, and confidential. We see one site in particular, seeking.com, and I'll put the link to that site in the description for this video. We see that they refer to the older men as successful members and the younger women as attractive members. And they say that the attractive members are empowered and they have exquisite taste and appetite for a relationship filled with new experiences, and that they want the good life. They argue the attractive members are not constrained by traditional definitions of relationships. They're looking to create relationships on their own terms, and that the attractive members appreciate the value of finding a successful member who can act as a mentor, teacher, confidant, friend, lover, and even a business partner or investor. So they're really selling what seems to be a very interesting take on this behavior and this type.
Okay, basically, you're going to have to give somebody your money for companionship. That's the way I'm taking it. Now, I may be wrong. Y'all drop in the comments, let me know. But that's the way I'm taking it so far. I got to study up on this stuff myself because I don't do it. I don't understand it. But let's keep listening to what he's got to say.
Type of arrangement, right? They're really looking at this a lot differently than I do. And I'll touch on that a little later in the video as well. We see other information on the same site that, again, kind of sells a different angle. Like the idea that the attractive members want to experience genuine feelings of love, and maybe it can lead to a long-term commitment. That this is really a modern relationship, one that's different and matches the attractive members' ambition and drive. They advertise that the attractive members want a romantic partner who will play the traditional role of a gentleman without placing unreasonable limitations on personal growth. And then they also have this empowerment angle, which I find particularly interesting. The attractive members seek an approach of honesty, fairness, and the belief that everyone can find those who will love them for who they really are. So that's interesting that they say this. They're really saying here that the companionship being exchanged for money, and maybe other things being exchanged for money, that's finding somebody who loves you for who you really are. This makes no sense to me at all. Ostensibly, this arrangement is based on the idea of hypergamy, which is when women prioritize wealth or social status in mate selection. It's also referred to as marrying up. And again, that's promoted specifically on this site. So now kind of moving back to the general concept. Isn't somebody really here just exchanging money or gifts for sex, but tiptoeing around the issue, allowing people to believe this is okay, justified, helpful, or even empowering? And are there mental health consequences to this behavior? Well, this hasn't really been well studied, but from my clinical experience, which of course is anecdotal, I would say that most of the time when this happens, it really is just exchanging money for sex, and it does come with very severe mental health consequences. So I'll get to those, but let me first start with the potential legal consequences, because this is a question that comes up a lot. Again, is this an illegal activity disguised as something else? Well, the laws vary from country to country, from state to state, but the sugar daddy relationship becomes criminal when there's a specific agreement to exchange cash or material possessions for sex. And the agreement usually must be explicit, and it must be executed immediately. So that exchange must take place right after the agreement's made. This is why the sugar daddy, sugar baby type relationships are usually considered legal, or at least they're not really prosecuted vigorously. Couples tend to arrange the relationships so sex isn't really stated explicitly in the agreement. It doesn't seem to be a main part that's featured.
Therapy for me, I think when the...
Instead, again, you see things like social events and companionship. So really the couple is getting around the law a little bit because they're murky about the time aspects, right? So any agreement that takes place, the actual execution of that agreement would be later on. We see other activities, right? Going out to movies, the theater, dinner, and we see the lack of being explicit, the lack of just saying the words that would create that criminal situation. And because the couples get to know each other first, it means they may be able to detect like undercover law enforcement. And it's also hard to imagine that law enforcement would invest the type of time required to catch people doing this. Are they going to send an older male police officer undercover as a sugar daddy for weeks or months to find out like an explicit statement and make an arrest? Or similarly, a younger female police officer to play the role of a sugar baby, it would be very expensive and probably unpopular in most areas to pursue those types of cases. So this whole industry more or less runs under the radar because the people are just being a little bit more subtle about the arrangement that they're really getting into. So in terms of the mental health and personality characteristics that I've noticed from my clinical experience when working with people involved in these relationships. So it's important to point out here, I'm not referring to anyone specific in this description. These are general tendencies, again, from my clinical experience, from trainings, and what little we do see in the research. So for the older men, the so-called sugar daddies, the characteristics we tend to see would be narcissism, so like a sense of entitlement, requiring admiration, being jealous, having a grandiose sense of self. We see subclinical psychopathy, so being manipulative, tending to lie a lot, having a lack of empathy, and being sensation-seeking. And we also see Machiavellianism, so being opportunistic and cynical. So really, if we take these three characteristics, they're known as the dark triad, sometimes called the dark traits or the dark personality. And they're associated with a lot of problematic behavior. Other things I've noticed in this population would be they tend to be lonely. A surprising number are actually married or have other similar relationships like a long-term partner. And they tend to have other relationships like these sugar dating relationships. They also tend to have poor social skills and good income. Most of the time they're financially stable. In terms of personality, I'll conceptualize their personality, again the general tendency, using the 5-factor model. So this would be openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and eroticism. I remember this through the acronym OCEAN. So with openness to experience, this would be like being imaginative and creative and adventurous. Really, I've seen this kind of all over the place. I don't see a specific direction on this trait for the older men. In terms of conscientiousness, it tends to be at mid-level or higher. So high conscientiousness is associated with better earnings, so this would make sense. In terms of extroversion, so this would be friendliness, gregariousness, positive emotions, assertiveness. This tends to be high, but we do see some exceptions here. In terms of agreeableness, so the tendency to trust and wanting to cooperate with people, this is fairly low for these so-called sugar daddies, which isn't really surprising if you consider the narcissism and the subclinical psychopathy and the Machiavellianism, again, the dark triad. And in terms of neuroticism, the tendency to be upset easily, to react to situations strongly in terms of emotions, we see low neuroticism. Again, highly consistent with psychopathy in this case. In terms of the mental health characteristics, we see an overrepresentation of narcissistic personality disorder, which of course would make sense. This would be an extreme manifestation of narcissism. We see antisocial personality disorder overrepresented, as well as depression and substance use disorder. So now moving over to the mental health and personality for the younger women, the so-called sugar babies. So in terms of the different personality characteristics, we see narcissism, not surprising, also Machiavellianism, a tendency to be shallow, materialistic. We see many individuals here that have a lot of financial needs. 40% of sugar babies are college students. We see sensation-seeking, and in terms of the 5-factor model, we tend to see high openness to experience, so being adventurous and imaginative, low conscientiousness, impulsivity, high extroversion, high agreeableness, tending to trust other people. And for neuroticism, I've really seen this kind of all over the place, but we do see a number of these people have had traumatic experiences in the past and poor relationships. So most of the time I would say the neuroticism tends to be mid-range or higher, not low neuroticism like we would see with the sugar daddies. On the mental health side, overrepresented mental health diagnoses for this population would include borderline personality disorder, which is a personality disorder that's characterized by difficulty in relationships and impulsivity and anger and some other problems. We see substance use disorder. This is fairly common, and this can explain the financial need portion that occurs a lot with this group. We see depression, narcissistic personality disorder. This can occur in women as well as men. And we see histrionic personality disorder. So a number of the cluster B personality disorders here represented in this group. So how about the outcomes of these relationships? People have a lot of questions about these arrangements and what really happens, right? So questions I hear would be, does anyone in these arrangements really fall in love? Is that really an outcome we see? I guess it could happen, but in my experience, no. No, it's basically just an exchange of one thing for another, right? Not something that involves true feelings, depth, sensitivity, or love. Is it an avenue to something meaningful or long-lasting in general, right? So outside of love, can it still be an important relationship? In my experience, no. I just don't see any evidence for this. Is it sometimes only companionship? Meaning, are there some of these relationships that don't involve any type of sex? I've not really seen that. I mean, it could happen again, maybe here or there, but in general, again, this is about exchanging one thing for another. Another question I get a lot is, isn't this safer than just the straight exchange of sex for money, right? So isn't this kind of a safer way to go about this type of arrangement? Well, I guess in a sense, safety is relative. So the example I use for this would be, if you're kind of standing on the sidewalk and somebody throws a rattlesnake at you, that's safer than if they threw 5 rattlesnakes at you, right? So I guess it's all depending on what somebody refers to as safe, like their threshold for danger.
Yeah.
I would say that in general, 1 rattlesnake is dangerous enough. And I think one of the key dangers here with this type of arrangement, and this may be something that was operating in this Mackenzie Lewick case, is that people tend to believe it's safer, right? So they take fewer precautions. There's something about this arrangement that seems playful, romantic, caring, fun, adventurous, but really it's not. Really it's the same thing that we've seen for many, many years, repackaged, so it can be thought of as safer and more acceptable by society, like it meets society's norms a little more so than other arrangements. But people can dress things up in all kinds of ways. It doesn't change the nature of this arrangement, right? If people want to have these types of arrangements, again, there's legal concerns and mental health concerns, but I think that if they're okay with all those potential consequences, they should just call these types of arrangements what they really are. Not try to move around and try to find nuances that aren't there and maneuver into a position that seems like there's really romance or safety or whatever, because, again, there's not. This comes back to just being straightforward and direct and just acknowledging something for what it actually is. So I know whenever I talk about topics like this, like the sugar dating situation, there are going to be a variety of opinions, people who agree with me and disagree with me, and who have other thoughts and examples perhaps from lives of people they know or from their own lives. Please put those opinions and thoughts in the comments section. It's sure to generate an interesting dialogue. As always, I hope you found this description of the sugar dating relationship to be interesting. Thanks for watching.
Okay. So, make sure I turn that off. Okay, yeah, because I'll be messing that one up. That's the sugar dating thing, guys, and
Welcome to my scientifically informed insider look at mental health.
Yep, I messed it up. That's the sugar dating thing. I personally don't like to engage in sugar dating for all the reasons that somebody said he stated in this thing. Okay, and one of the dangers I saw as far as the guys, you can go over there with the sugar junk going on and get your butt robbed. I've seen that happen to people too. I've known a girl who did that to somebody. They got him to come over and stuff like that, and dude wound up getting shot. Dead. He's dead now. So I don't know. I don't do the sugar dating thing. I don't think that any guy should do it, but for some reason it become very popular in the manosphere these days. So I'm gonna be looking into that, but doing videos like this to kind of look into why that's so popular. But y'all drop in the comments, let me know what y'all think about it. It's been Taurus down to y'all. Go hard, go home, hit the subscribe button, like, and let's see what these people are talking about today. All right, I'm out. Peace.